Just for a moment, her 2 young daughters were building sandcastles on the beach, out of her sight. But when she looked back, they were gone without a trace. For 8 agonizing months, the devastated single mom searched desperately for her little girls, coordinating with police and scouring every inch of Australia with no sign of them. But then, just as she was putting up more missing persons posters on a secluded beach, fate took a sudden turn. A seaplane pilot landed nearby, claiming he'd just flown over a deserted private island and seen something unsettling. This discovery and chance encounter would change the entire case in ways no one could have imagined. Before we dive into the twists and turns of this shocking true story, tell us where you're tuning in from today. And if you find this story compelling, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alexandra stepped out of the unmarked police car, feeling the warm Australian breeze against her face. She brushed a strand of hair from her eyes and glanced at Ben, the police officer who had driven her here, dressed in civilian clothes. His car was parked by a small wooden building that pulled double duty as a security lodge and information center for this quiet beach in Western Australia. "This way," Ben said, leading her toward the building. Unlike the bustling tourist beaches of Queensland, this stretch of shoreline was serene, mostly frequented by locals from the nearby community. Alexandra could count the number of visitors on one hand as she scanned the beach. Ben walked ahead of her, with purpose in his stride. At the door of the security lodge, he showed his badge to the 2 men standing guard. They nodded in recognition and ushered them inside. The interior was simple but functional, with maps of the coastline pinned to corkboards and a low hum from the radio system in the corner. "This is Alexandra," Ben introduced her to the 3 local authorities inside. "The mother of Casey and Chloe, the missing girls I told you about." The tallest of the men nodded solemnly. "The Queensland case. We received the reports a few months back." Alexandra stood straighter, clutching her purse tightly. "Yes, my daughters have been missing for 8 months now." Her voice remained steady despite the pain that flashed across her face. "They were last seen at a beach in Queensland." Ben placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "We've been searching across all states. Last month in New South Wales, last week in Perth, now we're continuing north along Western Australia." One of the officers, an older man with skin weathered from years in the sun, stepped forward. "I'm Officer Davis. We've been briefed about your case. Terrible situation. We're planning to search this area thoroughly for the next few days," Ben explained, his professional demeanor never broke. "Alexandra would like permission to put up missing children signs around the beach and town." Officer Davis nodded immediately. "Of course, please do whatever you need. We'll help in any way possible." "Thank you," Alexandra said softly. "I'd like to get to the beach before it gets too hot, if that's all right." Ben nodded. "I'll stay here with the officers to coordinate our search efforts. We'll be in touch throughout the day." Alexandra thanked them and stepped outside into the morning light. She had only walked a few paces when she heard Ben calling her name. She turned to see him jogging to catch up. "Alexandra," he said, his voice gentler than it had been inside with the other officers. "Remember what we discussed earlier?" Alexandra's shoulders slumped slightly, and she nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, 8 months is a long time." Ben's eyes reflected genuine sympathy. "If we don't find anything here in Western Australia by the end of the month, we'll need to consider other approaches." He couldn't finish the sentence, but the unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. "You mean stop searching?" Alexandra said, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you think they're—" She couldn't bring herself to say the word. Ben shifted uncomfortably. "We've checked every state, followed every lead. No one has seen them." Alexandra straightened her spine. "I should get going then. Gotta make the most of the time I have." Ben walked to his car and unlocked the trunk. He pulled out several wooden stakes with laminated missing persons posters attached to them and a stack of additional flyers. "Here, call me when you're done, and I'll pick you up." Alexandra took the materials with a nod of thanks. As Ben returned to the security lodge, she turned toward the beach. The posters in her hand felt feather-light compared to the crushing weight in her heart. The wind whipped Alexandra's hair as she walked along the shoreline, wooden stakes clutched tightly in one hand and posters in the other. With each step, memories of that terrible day 8 months ago crashed over her like the waves to her right. It had been a somber occasion. She and her daughters had scattered her husband David's ashes in the waters off Queensland that morning. Cancer had taken him too young, leaving Alexandra a 34-year-old widow with 2 young daughters to raise on her own. After the emotional ceremony, they'd stayed at the beach, trying to find some measure of peace in the gentle rhythm of the waves. Alexandra had gone to buy drinks at a beachside cafe, leaving Casey and Chloe building a sandcastle just 20 yards away. She had only turned her back for 5 minutes, 5 minutes that had stretched into 8 months of desperate searching. A tear traced a path down her cheek, quickly whisked away by the salty breeze. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, forcing herself to focus on the present. "I have to be strong," she whispered to herself. "They're out there somewhere." Alexandra refused to believe they had simply wandered off or drowned. Her girls were too smart, too wary of the water. Someone had taken them, someone who knew how to disappear without a trace. Finding a spot where the sand was still dry but visible to beachgoers, Alexandra began digging a small hole with her hands. She worked methodically, driving the wooden stake deep into the sand until it stood firm, the faces of her daughters smiling back at her from the laminated poster. Casey's gap-toothed smile, a result of losing her first tooth just weeks before her disappearance. Chloe's dimples that appeared whenever she laughed. 6 and 5 years old, so innocent, so vulnerable. Alexandra stared at their photographs, then at the vast ocean beyond, whispering a prayer to whatever forces might be listening. Ben's words echoed in her mind. The police theory was straightforward. If the girls were still alive after 8 months, someone would have seen them. If they had been kidnapped, there would be some trace of information. A ransom demand, credit card transactions, something. The lack of evidence led them to believe the worst. Lost in her thoughts, Alexandra barely registered the approaching aircraft at first. But the buzz of the engine grew louder, drawing her gaze skyward. A seaplane was descending, its pontoons kissing the water as it made a smooth landing. Alexandra quickly glanced around, wondering if she had inadvertently chosen a designated landing area for her sign placement. She was about to retrieve it when she saw a man exit the seaplane and start jogging in her direction. "I'm sorry," she called out as he approached. "I didn't realize this was a landing area. I'll move the sign." No, the man waved dismissively as he reached her. "It's not your fault at all. I don't usually land here." He was tall, with windswept hair and the kind of deep tan you only get from spending most of your life outdoors. "My name's Robert Martin," he said, extending his hand. "I saw you placing the sign and recognized the photos from the news." Alexandra shook his hand cautiously. "I'm sorry, but I'm quite busy. I don't have time for—" "I'm not looking for an autograph," Robert cut in quickly, looking embarrassed. "I just—" He paused, looking from Alexandra to the poster and back again. "I think I've seen your daughters." Alexandra's heart did a little flip. "What? Where?" "I was flying over Middle Island, not far from here," Robert explained, gesturing toward the horizon. "I was at a low altitude and saw 2 young girls who looked about the same age as your children. I was on my way to report it to authorities when I spotted you here." "Middle Island?" Alexandra repeated, her mind spun. "Yes, it's supposed to be uninhabited. It's a private island, marked that way on maps. That's why I found it strange to see children there. Robert's expression was earnest as he continued. They were with two men on the beach. I didn't get a clear view of their faces from the plane, but when I saw your poster just now. Alexandra clutched the remaining wooden stake so tightly her knuckles turned white. We need to go to the police right now. Robert nodded. I was heading there anyway. Don't worry. The authorities will check it out and confirm if they're your daughters. Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, flickered within Alexandra as she followed Robert back toward the security lodge where Ben waited with the local officers. Alexandra and Robert hurried into the small building where Ben was still talking with the local officers. The conversation stopped as they entered, all eyes turning toward them. Alexandra? Ben asked, noting her flushed face and shallow breaths. Officer Davis nodded in recognition at Robert. Martin, didn't expect to see you today. I need to report something, Robert said without wasting a moment. I was flying over Middle Island about an hour ago and saw two young girls with a few men on the beach. Ben straightened, his attention immediately captured. Middle Island is uninhabited, isn't it? It's a private island, Officer Davis explained. Owned by a consortium of wealthy individuals. They visit occasionally. Robert turned to Alexandra. When I saw you on the beach with the missing poster, I realized the girls I spotted looked similar to your daughters. Are you certain of this? Ben asked, his tone measured but laced with urgency. Robert shook his head slightly. I can't be 100% sure. I was just flying by. Didn't get a clear look at their faces. Officer Davis typed something into the computer terminal. It could easily be the children of the island owners, he suggested, his fingers drumming on the keyboard. Let me check our database. Alexandra stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. I need you to check, please. If there's even a slight chance. We understand, Ben assured her. Though his expression remained carefully neutral, the tension in the room was palpable as Officer Davis clicked through various screens. Alexandra couldn't stop her gaze from darting between the computer and Ben's face, looking for any sign, any reaction. Here we go, Officer Davis finally said. Middle Island is jointly owned by several wealthy individuals from Perth and Sydney. According to our records, at least 3 of them have young daughters between the ages of 4 and 8. Alexandra's flicker of hope died down. But what if? So what Robert saw was most likely the owner's children, Officer Davis concluded, leaning back in his chair. Case closed. Alexandra shook her head emphatically. You don't know that for certain. Please, couldn't someone go check just to be sure? Officer Davis exchanged a look with his colleagues. Mrs. Hamilton, your daughters went missing in Queensland, thousands of kilometers from here. It's highly unlikely that. Please, Alexandra interrupted, her voice breaking. I've been searching for 8 months. What's one more check? What if they're there and we do nothing? Ben stepped forward. Alexandra, I understand how you feel, but... No, you don't understand, she said, turning to face him. You can't possibly understand what it's like to lose your children, to not know if they're alive or dead, to imagine them calling for you every night when you close your eyes. The room fell silent. Even Officer Davis looked uncomfortable. What about a compromise? Ben finally suggested. We'll send officers to the island to check just to be thorough. They can make inquiries about whether anyone has seen Casey and Chloe. Officer Davis sighed, but gave a reluctant nod. I suppose we could arrange that. Thank you, Alexandra whispered, relief flooding through her. Wait outside with Robert, Ben told her gently. I need to discuss the logistics with the officers. Alexandra nodded and followed Robert out of the room. feeling a peculiar mix of hope and dread. As the door closed behind them, she could hear Ben's voice, now firmer and more authoritative, as he began coordinating with the local authorities. "I'm sorry if I got your hopes up," Robert said as they stood outside the security lodge. The midday sun beat down, casting short shadows on the sandy ground. Alexandra shook her head. "Don't apologize. We don't know what they'll find yet." Before Robert could respond, the door opened and Ben emerged, followed by 2 uniformed officers. The officers appeared to be locals with the same weathered skin and laid-back demeanor common in coastal communities. "Alexandra," Ben said, "we've arranged for these officers to visit Middle Island. They know the owners better than I do, which should make things easier." The taller of the 2 officers nodded toward Alexandra. "We'll be thorough, ma'am." Robert stepped forward. "I can take them in my seaplane. It'll be faster than going by boat." Ben considered this, then nodded. "That would be helpful. Thank you." As the officers coordinated with Robert, Alexandra watched them closely, desperately wanting to go along, but knowing they wouldn't allow it. Robert approached her before boarding the seaplane. "Here's my number," he said, handing her a business card. "In case you need to reach me or if you hear anything new." Alexandra took the card and gave him her number in return. "Thank you for everything, Robert. Not many people would have stopped to help." Robert nodded, a somber expression on his face. "I hope it turns out well. I'll call you as soon as we learn anything." Alexandra and Ben stood side by side on the beach, watching as Robert and the 2 officers boarded the seaplane. The engine roared to life, and the seaplane skimmed across the water before lifting into the air, becoming smaller and smaller until it disappeared from view. "Now we wait," Ben said, turning to look at Alexandra. He frowned slightly. "You look exhausted. When was the last time you slept properly?" Alexandra couldn't remember. The days had blurred into one long, agonizing blur during these months of searching. "I'm fine," she insisted. "No, you're not," Ben said gently. "I've booked an apartment for you not far from here. You should rest while we wait for news." Alexandra started to protest, but realized how truly drained she felt. "Maybe you're right," she conceded. Ben drove them to a small 2-story apartment building about 15 minutes from the beach. The town was charming, with a main street dotted with small shops and cafes. Few people were out in the midday heat. At the front desk, Ben handled the check-in process while Alexandra waited, her mind constantly returning to the island and what the officers might find there. Would they recognize her daughters if they saw them? Would they look hard enough? The questions circled in her mind like circling vultures. "Room 204, Ben said, handing her a key. "I'll come back when we hear from the officers. Try to get some rest in the meantime." Alexandra nodded, taking the key. "Thank you, Ben, for everything." "It's my job," he replied, though the look in his eyes hinted it was far more than that. "Call if you need anything." Inside the apartment, Alexandra set down her bags and looked around the small space. It was clean and comfortable, with a kitchenette, a small sitting area, and a bedroom through an open door. The pile of missing children posters sat on the table where she'd placed them, Casey and Chloe's smiling faces looking back at her. The walls seemed to close in as she stood there, the silence screamed at her. How could she rest when her daughters might be so close? The thought of sitting idle in this small room while others searched for her children was unbearable. Alexandra grabbed her purse and the stack of posters. Rest could wait. She had work to do, signs to post, people to talk to. Perhaps someone in this small community had seen something, knew something. She couldn't afford to miss a single chance, not when her daughters might be just across the water. With renewed determination, she left the apartment, locking the door behind her. Alexandra moved deliberately through the small seaside town. The stack of posters growing thinner as she taped them to lampposts, shop windows, and community bulletin boards. Each poster was a silent plea, a desperate mother's cry for help. The town was sleepy in the afternoon heat, with few people on the streets. Those she did encounter gave her sympathetic looks, but shook their heads when she asked if they'd seen her daughters. Their kindness was genuine, but it did little to soothe her mounting anxiety. The town center gave way to a small park, its benches scattered and its playground baking empty in the afternoon sun. Alexandra approached a light pole near the park's entrance and began securing a poster with tape she'd borrowed from a shop owner. "Those your little ones?" a voice asked from behind her. Alexandra turned to find an elderly man watching her work. He was thin and weathered, with deeply tanned skin that suggested a lifetime spent outdoors. His clothes were simple but clean, worn khaki pants and a faded blue button-up shirt. "Yes," Alexandra replied, smoothing the edges of the poster. "My daughters, they've been missing for 8 months now." The man stepped closer, squinting at the photographs. "Thought so. They look familiar." Alexandra's heart skipped a beat, but she'd experienced too many false hopes to let her excitement show.
"Familiar?"
"You've seen them?" The man tilted his head, studying the images. "Maybe. Can't say for certain." He gestured vaguely toward the ocean. "I'm a fisherman, you see. Been one all my life. Got a sharp memory for faces, even little ones." "Please," Alexandra said, trying to keep her voice steady. "If you've seen them, any information could help." The man scratched his chin thoughtfully. "It was one morning, not too long ago. I was heading out early, just before sunrise. Saw a yacht heading toward Middle Island. There were 2 little girls on deck." Alexandra felt lightheaded suddenly. "Middle Island?" "That's right. Rich folks own it. Keep to themselves mostly." The man's eyes narrowed as he continued to study the poster. "Looking at these photos now, I'd say the girls I saw looked mighty similar. Can't be entirely sure, mind you. Kids that age, they can look alike from a distance." "When exactly did you see them?" Alexandra pressed, her voice urgent. "Few months back, I reckon. Can't say precisely, but I know the sea, and I've got strong memories." Alexandra reached for her phone. "I need to tell the police about this. Would you be willing to speak with them?" The old man took a step back, his demeanor suddenly wary. "No phones, no police. Me and the authorities don't get along so well." "Please, they're my daughters," Alexandra implored. The man shook his head firmly. "I've said what I've seen. That's all I can do." He glanced around as if checking whether anyone was watching them. "If you need to find me again, ask for Micah's lodge near the north end of the beach. That's where I stay." Before Alexandra could respond, he added in a low voice, "Don't trust everyone around here, Mrs. Not everyone's what they seem." With that cryptic warning, he turned and walked away, his gait slow but purposeful. Alexandra sank onto a nearby bench, her mind racing. This was the second person who claimed to have seen girls resembling her daughters on Middle Island. Could it really be coincidence? She took out her phone to call Ben, but paused when it began to ring in her hand. Ben's name flashed on the screen. She answered immediately. "Ben, did they find anything?" "The officers just returned from the island." Ben's voice was measured, professional. "They spoke with the owners and confirmed the children. They're their daughters, not Casey and Chloe."
"I'm sorry, Alexandra."
The hope that had been building inside her deflated. "Are they sure? Did they check thoroughly?" "Yes. The officers spoke with everyone on the island. No one has seen your daughters, and the children there are definitely not them. We're back to square one." Alexandra closed her eyes, processing this information alongside what the fisherman had just told her. Something didn't add up. I want to speak with those officers myself, she said firmly.
Ben Said.
Alexandra, I understand your frustration. But it won't change anything. We need to focus on searching elsewhere. Tomorrow, we move on to the next town. But the authorities confirmed it wasn't your daughters, Ben interrupted gently. I've coordinated with local officers to continue searching around town while we're here. That's the best use of our resources right now. Alexandra fell silent, thinking about the fisherman's warning, don't trust everyone. Why would he say that? And why would two separate people claim to have seen girls resembling her daughters on an island where the officers found nothing suspicious? Alexandra, are you still there? Yes, she replied finally. You're right. We should search elsewhere. The conversation ended shortly after, but Alexandra remained on the bench staring at the poster of her daughters. Her instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. The fisherman had seemed genuinely certain about what he'd seen, and his warning lingered in her mind. She stood up with sudden resolve. Her daughters had already been missing for 8 months because the right questions hadn't been asked. The right stones hadn't been turned. She wouldn't let it happen again, not when they might be so close. Alexandra spotted a vacant taxi near the park entrance and hurried toward it. The driver, a middle-aged man with a friendly smile, looked up as she approached. Can you take me to Micah's lodge? She asked, sliding into the back seat. It's somewhere along the north end of the beach. Micah's place? Sure thing, the driver replied, starting the engine. Old fisherman's shack. Been there for ages. The taxi wound through the small streets, eventually turning onto a coastal road that hugged the shoreline. After about 10 minutes, the paved road gave way to a dirt track, and Alexandra could see a handful of weathered wooden shacks ahead. That's the fisherman's area, the driver explained. Micah's is the third hut along. Alexandra paid the fare and stepped out onto the sandy ground. The air smelled strongly of salt and fish, with nets drying on wooden racks and small boats pulled up onto the shore. A few men worked quietly, mending nets or sorting their catch. She made her way toward the third hut, her shoes sinking slightly into the sand with each step. The structure was small but sturdy, with walls silver-gray from years of battling the elements. Outside, various fishing tools hung from hooks. The old man she'd met in the park was sitting on a wooden crate, methodically cleaning a collection of lures. He looked up as her shadow fell across him. You found me then, he stated simply, setting aside his work. I need to know more about what you saw, Alexandra said without preamble. And what you meant when you said not to trust everyone. The man glanced around, checking if anyone was within earshot. Name's Justin, he said finally. Micah was my father. Justin's weathered face grew grim. He's gone now. Police put him away for something he didn't do. They claimed he was fishing too close to Middle Island when some rich folks were visiting. Cooked up stories that landed him in jail. His voice dropped. He died in there, beaten by other inmates. Alexandra's expression softened with sympathy. I'm sorry about your father. Justin shrugged, though the pain in his eyes was evident. It's been years now, but that's why I don't trust the authorities around here, especially when it comes to that island and its owners. What can you tell me about them? Alexandra asked. The people who own the island. Wealthy folks from the cities, their families have owned it for generations. Justin picked up a lure and turned it in his fingers. Used to be just them visiting, bringing their friends, having parties, but in recent years I've noticed children coming and going. Children like their own children. Justin's eyes met hers. That's what everyone says. Their daughters, their sons, their friends' kids. But I've watched that island most of my life, and something changed. The kids often look different from one another, and I never see the same ones twice. A cold dread settled in Alexandra's stomach despite the warm afternoon. Are you saying they're kidnapping children? Justin didn't answer directly. In this messed up world, nothing would surprise me anymore. He set the lure down carefully. When you came asking about your daughters and mentioned that pilot who saw similar-looking girls on the island, well, it got me thinking. The police went to check, Alexandra said. They claimed the children there belonged to the owners. Justin scoffed. And you believe them? After 2 different people told you they saw girls matching your daughter's description. Alexandra hesitated. I don't know what to believe anymore. Come with me, Justin said suddenly, standing up. He walked around to the back of his hut where a pair of high-powered binoculars hung from a hook. He handed them to Alexandra and pointed toward the horizon. Look there. Alexandra raised the binoculars to her eyes, adjusting them until the distant waters came into focus. After a moment of scanning, she spotted what Justin was pointing to, a luxury yacht moving across the water. Zoom in more, Justin instructed. Alexandra adjusted the binoculars again, focusing tighter on the vessel. Her heart leaped into her throat when she made out figures on the deck. Several men in casual clothes and there, standing near the railing, 2 small figures. Those are. Her voice caught in her throat. Are those my daughters? Casey and Chloe. Her hands trembled as she continued to stare through the binoculars, drinking in the sight of her children after 8 long months of absence. Looks like your daughters are coming back to the mainland, along with whoever's holding them, Justin said grimly. The question is, what are you gonna do about it? Alexandra lowered the binoculars, her mind racing. I need to call Ben and Robert. She paused, looking at Justin. Thank you. I don't know how I can ever repay you. The old fisherman waved off her thanks. No payment needed. Just make sure those men end up behind bars where they belong. His eyes hardened. That'll be payment enough. The sky had begun to darken as Alexandra left Justin's lodge. The sunset painted the horizon in brilliant strokes of orange and purple. There were no taxis in this remote area, and Alexandra found herself alone with the urgent need to act quickly. She reached for her phone. Her first instinct was to call Ben, but a flicker of hesitation stopped her. What if the local authorities were involved, just as Justin had suggested? Ben had been coordinating with them. Could she truly be certain he wasn't somehow part of this whole mess? Alexandra scrolled through her contacts and found Robert's number instead. He had seen her daughters on the island first, and he had no ties to the local police. She dialed his number, her heart pounding as she waited for him to answer. Hello, Alexandra. Robert's voice came through after the 3rd ring. Robert, I need your help, Alexandra said urgently. I just saw my daughters on a yacht heading toward the mainland. I'm positive it's them. That's amazing timing, Robert replied, his voice equally urgent. I was about to call you. I'm at One Arm Point Airport and I can see a yacht approaching the mainland. There are 2 young girls on board who look strikingly similar to your daughters in the photos. Alexandra's breath caught. Where exactly are they heading? Do you know? They seem to be heading for the private marina north of town. I don't want to lose sight of them. If I leave now, I won't know where they go once they dock. Stay there, Alexandra decided quickly. Keep watching them. I'll call Ben and get him to meet you there with officers. Sounds like a plan. I'll keep the line open if anything changes. Alexandra ended the call and immediately dialed Ben's number. Despite her lingering doubts, she needed his help. He had the authority and resources she didn't.
Alexandra. Ben answered promptly.
Is everything okay? I found my daughters, she said without preamble. They're on a yacht heading to the mainland right now. Robert can see them from the airport, and I saw them through binoculars from the fisherman's lodge. Wait, slow down, Ben said. Which fisherman? When did you see this? Alexandra quickly explained about meeting Justin and what he had told her, including his suspicions about the Middle Island owners and the local authorities. That's a serious accusation, Ben said, his tone careful. Where are you now? Alexandra gave him her location near Justin's lodge. Ben, I know how this sounds, but I'm certain it's them. 2 different people have seen girls matching their description, and now I've seen them with my own eyes. There was a brief silence on the line. Stay where you are. I'll pick you up in 10 minutes. Don't approach anyone else about this. Alexandra paced anxiously as she waited, keeping her phone ready in case Robert called with an update. True to his word, Ben's car appeared within minutes, kicking up a plume of dust as it screeched to a stop beside her. Get in, he said, leaning across to open the passenger door. Once inside, Alexandra turned to him immediately. We need to hurry. They could disappear again. Ben nodded, his expression serious as he put the car in drive. Tell me exactly what Justin told you. As they drove, Alexandra relayed the entire conversation, including Justin's warning about trusting the authorities and his claim that children often appeared on the island only to never be seen again. If what he's saying is true, Ben said carefully, and if the local authorities are somehow involved in covering for these people, then we need to be extremely careful. This is bigger than just finding your daughters. I don't care how big it is, Alexandra said fiercely. I just want Casey and Chloe back, that's all.
Ben nodded.
I understand, but we need to do this right. First, I need to know if you're absolutely certain the girls you saw were your daughters. This is dangerous ground we're stepping onto. Alexandra met his gaze steadily. I saw them, Ben. A mother always knows her children. Ben held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. Okay, here's the plan. He tapped his earpiece. I'm going to call Robert back and get a current location. Then I'll coordinate with my team from Queensland, those who came with us here, not the local officers. We'll approach this from 2 angles to make sure they can't escape. Alexandra watched as Ben made the call, putting it on speaker so she could hear. Robert, it's Ben. I'm with Alexandra. What's your current position? They're still on track, Robert relayed. They're heading for the beach. They must be leaving the island after the officers questioned them earlier. Ben's expression darkened. Can you confirm your exact coordinates? As Robert relayed the information, Ben entered it into his car's GPS. I'm going to contact my team and notify the state authorities. If the local authorities are corrupt, they might tip off the men, causing them to change course and return to the island. Can you get to your seaplane? Heading there, Robert confirmed. If they try to return to Middle Island, I can intercept them from the air. Perfect. Stay on this line, Robert. I need to make another call. Ben handed the phone to Alexandra and pulled out a second device, quickly dialing a number. Alexandra held the phone tightly. Robert, can you still see my daughters? Yes, they're still on deck. They appear to be. Wait, they're being taken below now. I think they're preparing to land. Ben ended his call and turned to Alexandra. My team is in position and I've informed the state authorities about everything you told me. We'll approach from the south while my team moves in from the north. If those men get tipped off, we'll know it came from the local police, and they'll likely try to head back out to sea. Robert can track them from the air. We'll have them surrounded. Alexandra nodded, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her. What about the local police if they're involved? I just called the state police commissioner directly, Ben said grimly. If the local authorities are corrupt, we're about to find out. As if on cue, Ben's radio crackled to life. "Officer Hansen, this is dispatch. We've got reports of suspicious activity at Holo Beach. Please confirm your position." Ben exchanged a look with Alexandra before responding. "This is Hansen. I'm en route to Holo Beach now with Mrs. Hamilton. ETA, 5 minutes. Copy that. Local units are being dispatched as well." Ben turned off the radio and increased his speed. Now we'll see whose side everyone's on. The sunset had given way to dusk by the time Ben's car approached Holo Beach. He parked on a rise overlooking the shoreline, giving them a clear vantage point while maintaining a safe distance. Through his binoculars, Ben could see a black luxury SUV already parked near the water's edge waiting. "There," he said, handing the binoculars to Alexandra. "The yacht is approaching that section of beach. Look at the figures getting off the smaller boat." Alexandra adjusted the focus, her hands trembling slightly. "I see them. 2 men, one heavy-set, one tall and thin." She moved the binoculars slightly. "And the girls, they're carrying them." Ben took the binoculars back, focusing intently. "The girls appear to be unconscious. They're completely limp. Drugged." Alexandra whispered, her voice catching in her throat. "They've drugged my babies." Ben lowered the binoculars, his expression grim. "If those really are your daughters, this confirms they've been kidnapped. No loving parent would drug their own children like that." "We have to go down there now," Alexandra insisted, reaching for the door handle. Ben placed a firm hand on her arm. "Wait, we need to see how this plays out first. Look, the local police are arriving." Through the binoculars, they watched as 2 uniformed officers emerged from the security lodge they had visited earlier that day. The officers approached the men, who appeared agitated at first. "An argument's breaking out," Ben narrated, his eyes glued to the scene. The heavy-set one is gesturing angrily at the officers. Alexandra could barely breathe as she waited. "What's happening?" "The men are. They're handing something to the officers. Envelopes, probably money." Ben quickly pulled out his phone and began recording through the binoculars. "They're bribing them?" Alexandra asked, incredulous. "Looks that way. And the officers are taking it." Ben's voice was tight with suppressed anger. "They're not even trying to hide it." They watched as the men carried the unconscious girls back to the yacht, the local officers standing guard, making sure no one interfered. "They're getting away," Alexandra said desperately. "We have to stop them." "Not yet," Ben replied, still recording. "Robert should be in position by now, and my team's closing in. We need to catch everyone involved." He touched his earpiece. "Robert, what's your status?" In the air came the immediate response. "I can see the yacht. It's leaving the shore now." "My team is in position near your landing area," Ben confirmed. "Wait for my signal, then intercept." Alexandra clutched the dashboard, her knuckles white. What if something goes wrong? What if they hurt the girls? Ben placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "These men want the girls alive. That's why they've kept them all these months. Trust me, Alexandra, we're going to get them back." They waited in tense silence as the yacht moved back further out to sea. Ben continued to observe through the binoculars, occasionally updating Alexandra on what he could see. "The yacht is about half a kilometer out now," he finally said. "Time to move." He spoke into his earpiece again. "All units, move in now. Robert, you're clear to intercept." Through the binoculars, Alexandra could see the distant shape of a seaplane approaching from the north. It descended rapidly, landing on the water with a spray of white foam. "It's happening," Ben said, starting the car. "We're going to intercept the corrupt officers." Stay in the car until I tell you it's safe. He drove quickly down to the beach, pulling up a short distance from where the local officers still stood. The men looked up in surprise as Ben's car approached. What's the plan? Alexandra asked nervously. I'm going to arrest them, Ben said simply. This evidence is irrefutable. You stay here and keep watching the water. I'll signal when it's safe to come out. Alexandra nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant scene unfolding on the water. Through the binoculars, she could see Robert's seaplane positioned in front of the yacht, blocking its path. Small figures, Ben's team, she realized, were boarding the vessel from a speedboat that had appeared from the north. They're surrounding them, she whispered to herself.
Please let my girls be safe.
Alexandra watched through the binoculars as the drama unfolded on the water. The officers from Ben's team had their weapons drawn as they boarded the yacht. One of the bodyguards attempted to jump overboard, but a shot rang out, likely a warning shot aimed at his leg to prevent escape. The rest of the men raised their hands in surrender. Meanwhile, on the beach, Ben approached the local officers with purpose in his stride. Alexandra couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see the confusion on their faces turn to alarm as Ben pulled out handcuffs. One officer tried to back away, reaching toward his holster, but Ben was faster. Within moments, both local officers were in handcuffs, looking stunned as Ben patted them down. He pulled out the envelopes they had received earlier, holding them up as evidence. Alexandra's attention returned to the water, where she could see officers escorting the handcuffed men onto a police boat that had appeared alongside the yacht. Most importantly, she saw two small figures being carefully carried aboard Robert's seaplane. Her heart leaped into her throat.
Casey.
Chloe, she whispered, though they were too far away to hear her. Ben waved toward the car, signaling that it was safe for her to come out. Alexandra didn't hesitate, throwing open the door and racing across the sand toward him. They've got them, Ben confirmed as she approached. Robert is bringing them to shore now, and paramedics are on their way. The arrested officers looked stunned, one of them shaking his head in disbelief. You don't understand, he was saying to Ben. Those families bring money to this community. They fund our schools, our infrastructure. Without them, this town would die. So, you looked the other way while they kidnapped kids? Ben's voice was cold with disgust. We didn't know about any kidnapping, the other officer protested. They told us the children were theirs or belonged to friends. We had no reason to question it. Save it for the interrogation, Ben replied, turning them over to two officers from his team who had just arrived in another vehicle. Alexandra barely registered this exchange, her eyes fixed on the water where Robert's seaplane was taxiing toward shore. The police boat carrying the arrested men was also approaching, the suspects surrounded by armed officers. What happens now? She asked Ben. We take the suspects to the main police station in town, not the local outpost. The girls will be checked by medical professionals and then reunited with you. Ben placed a hand on her shoulder.
It's almost over, Alexandra.
The yacht's passengers were brought ashore first. Alexandra recognized the heavy-set man and his taller companion from what she'd seen through the binoculars. They were flanked by several bodyguards, all in handcuffs, none making eye contact as they were escorted to waiting police vehicles. Then came the moment Alexandra had been waiting for 8 agonizing months. Robert's seaplane completed its approach to the shore, and as the door opened, she could see him emerge, followed by 2 officers carrying small, still forms. Alexandra ran forward, her heart pounding.
Casey.
Chloe. As the officers carried the girls closer, there was no doubt in Alexandra's mind these were her daughters. Their faces were thinner than she remembered, and their hair was longer, but they were unmistakably her children. Are they okay? She asked frantically, reaching out to touch Casey's cheek. Why aren't they waking up? They appear to have been sedated, one of the officers explained gently. The paramedics are here to check them out. An ambulance had indeed arrived, its lights flashing as it parked as close to the beach as possible. 2 paramedics hurried over with a stretcher. "We need to take them to the hospital," the lead paramedic said after a quick assessment. "Their vitals are stable, but we need to monitor them as the sedation wears off." Alexandra nodded, not taking her eyes off her daughters as they were carefully placed on stretchers and loaded into the ambulance. "I'm going with them," she said, already moving toward the vehicle. Ben caught her arm gently. "Alexandra, I need you at the station first. Your statement is critical to building a case against these men." He looked into her eyes. "I promise your daughters are in good hands. The sedation will take hours to wear off completely. You can give your statement and still be there when they wake up." Alexandra hesitated, torn between staying with her daughters and ensuring their kidnappers face justice. "These men have done this before," Ben added quietly. "And they'll do it again if we don't stop them. Your testimony could save other children." Alexandra looked at her daughters one last time as the paramedics prepared to close the ambulance doors. "Take care of them," she told the paramedics. "I'll be there as soon as I can." The lead paramedic nodded. "They'll be safe. I give you my word." As the ambulance drove away, Alexandra turned to Ben with renewed determination. "Let's go. I want these men to pay for what they've done." The town's main police station was a stark contrast to the small coastal outpost they'd visited earlier. This was a proper law enforcement facility with secure holding cells and formal interview rooms. Alexandra was led to one such room where a female officer with kind eyes introduced herself as Detective Miller. The detective had a careful, methodical manner as she prepared to take Alexandra's statement. "I understand this has been an incredibly difficult day," Detective Miller began, setting up a recording device. "But I need you to walk me through everything as clearly as you can, starting with when you first met Robert Martin." Alexandra nodded, gathering her thoughts. She recounted her encounter with Robert on the beach that morning, then her conversation with the local authorities, followed by meeting Justin the fisherman and seeing her daughters through his binoculars. As she spoke, Detective Miller took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly allowing Alexandra to tell her story uninterrupted. When she finished, the detective paused the recording. "Thank you, Alexandra. That's incredibly helpful." Detective Miller's professional demeanor softened slightly. "I want you to know that we've been interviewing the suspects separately, and we're already building a substantial case here." "What have you learned?" Alexandra asked, leaning forward anxiously. "The bodyguards have been more forthcoming than their employers," Detective Miller explained. "According to their statements, this operation goes far beyond just your daughters. They've admitted that multiple children have been taken over the years." Alexandra felt sick. "How many?" "We don't have an exact number yet, but at least a dozen over the past several years. Some were kept at their mansion outside Broome, others brought to the island for what they called weekend trips." The detective's expression darkened. "We don't know the full extent of what these men did with the children while in their custody. Given the circumstances and the suspects' profiles, we can only suspect the worst, though we'll need further investigation to confirm that." She paused, her voice lowering. "What we do know is that the older children, once they reached a certain age, were apparently sold to associates overseas." Alexandra felt sick. "My God," she whispered, covering her mouth. "Are you telling me these men, with my children? And the local police knew about this all along?" "Some of them, yes. They were paid to look the other way, told that the children were relatives or family friends." Detective Miller shook her head in disgust. "Money and influence can corrupt, especially in small, isolated communities dependent on wealthy patrons. Alexandra's hands trembled slightly as she processed this information. Will you be able to find the other children? Bring them home. We're already coordinating with international agencies. This will become a federal case, given its scope. Detective Miller placed a reassuring hand on Alexandra's arm. Your daughters are lucky. Many of these children have been missing for years, and we might never have found them if not for your persistence. Do you have enough evidence? Alexandra asked anxiously. These men seem powerful. What if they use their money and connections to escape justice? Between the physical evidence, the confessions we're gathering, and testimonies from witnesses like yourself, Robert and Justin, we have a solid case. Money and influence have their limits in this country, especially in cases involving child trafficking. Detective Miller's expression was determined. This will be a long legal battle, but we're committed to seeing it through. Alexandra nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. After 8 months of desperate searching, justice was finally within reach. What about the corrupted officers? Will they face charges too? Absolutely. Internal Affairs is already investigating the entire coastal precinct. Every officer will be questioned and those involved will be prosecuted. Detective Miller's voice hardened. We take corruption within our ranks very seriously. After answering a few more questions and signing her statement, Alexandra was finally free to go. Outside the interview room, she found Robert waiting for her. I wanted to make sure you were okay, he said, standing as she approached. And to offer you a ride to the hospital if you need one. Thank you, Alexandra said with genuine gratitude.
For everything.
If you hadn't spotted my daughters from your plane this morning.
Robert shook his head.
I'm just glad I could help. The officers told me my plane is being processed for evidence, so I'm grounded for a day or two. Ben appeared from another corridor, looking tired but satisfied.
Aldone hier, Alexandra.
One of my officers can drive you to the hospital now. Actually, Alexandra looked at Robert. I'd appreciate it if you'd come with me. You were part of bringing my daughters home. I'd like you to be there when they wake up. Robert seemed surprised, but nodded. I'd be honored. Ben called over a young officer who would drive them to the hospital. As they prepared to leave, Ben touched Alexandra's arm gently. We've got a long road ahead with the legal proceedings, but the most important thing is that Casey and Chloe are safe now.
You did it, Alexandra.
You never gave up, and you found them.
Alexandra smiled trug sudden tears.
Thank you, Ben, for believing in me when others didn't. With that, she left with Robert, her heart lighter than it had been in 8 long months, eager to finally reunite with her daughters. The hospital corridor was quiet as Alexandra and Robert followed the nurse toward the room where Casey and Chloe had been taken. Each step brought Alexandra closer to a moment she'd dreamed about for 8 agonizing months, a reunion she had sometimes feared would never happen. They're both doing well, the nurse explained as they walked. The sedative they were given was mild, meant to keep them calm rather than completely unconscious. They've been awake for about 20 minutes now. Alexandra's heart raced as the nurse stopped outside a door marked 215. They're right in here. Take as much time as you need. With trembling hands, Alexandra pushed open the door. The room was bright with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. 2 small beds stood side by side, and sitting up in them, looking somewhat bewildered but alert, were Casey and Chloe. For a moment no one moved or spoke. Then Casey's eyes widened in recognition. Mommy. Alexandra rushed forward, gathering both girls into her arms as tears flowed freely down her cheeks. My babies, she whispered, holding them close, feeling their warmth, their solid presence. Proof this wasn't just another dream. I've missed you so much. Chloe's small arms wrapped around her neck. You found us, Mommy. You really found us. I never stopped looking, Alexandra assured them, pulling back slightly to look at their faces. They were thinner than she remembered, with longer hair and slightly sun-darkened skin, but their eyes were the same, Casey's deep brown, Chloe's hazel flecked with gold. I searched the whole country for you both. The nurse returned briefly to check their vitals, confirming that both girls were healthy and the effects of the sedative had almost completely worn off. When she left, Alexandra sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a daughter on each side of her, unable to stop touching them, reassuring herself they were really there. This is Robert, she said, gesturing to where he stood quietly by the door. He helped find you. He's a pilot. Robert stepped forward with a gentle smile. Hello, Tere. I saw you both waving at my seaplane this morning when I flew over the island.
Qu'est-ce fais lit ab vis recognition? I remember.
We saw your plane and waved really big, hoping you'd see us. Well, it worked, Robert told her with a smile. I saw you both and recognized you from your mom's missing posters. Alexandra kissed the top of each girl's head, then asked the question that had been haunting her. Did those men? Did they hurt you at all? Both girls shook their heads. They were nice to us, Chloe said. They gave us toys and pretty dresses. They just made us pretend to be their daughters, Casey added. We had to call them uncle and do whatever they said. Alexandra felt a complex mix of relief and anger. Relief that her daughters hadn't been physically harmed. Anger at how these men had manipulated them. We shouldn't have gone with them that day, Casey said suddenly, her eyes filling with tears. But they said they had a princess castle to show us, and that you knew about it. They said it was a surprise you planned. Alexandra hugged her tighter. It wasn't your fault, sweetheart. They tricked you. Adults shouldn't lie to kids like that. We missed you every day, Chloe said, her small hand finding Alexandra's. The uncle said you were on a trip and would come get us soon, but you never came. After a while, we knew they were lying. Alexandra brushed a strand of hair from Chloe's face. I never stopped looking for you. Not for a single day. What happens now, Mommy? Casey asked.
Do we go home? Yes, sweetheart.
As soon as the doctors say you're ready, we'll go home. Alexandra smiled, a true smile that reached her eyes for the first time in months. We have a lot of catching up to do. Robert cleared his throat softly. I should probably give you all some time alone. I'm glad everything worked out. Alexandra looked up at him gratefully. Thank you again, Robert. I don't know how to repay you. He shook his head. Seeing this reunion is payment enough. Take care of each other. With a final smile at the girls, he left the room. As the afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, Alexandra sat with her daughters, listening to them recount their experiences in their childish way, answering their questions about home and what would happen next. There would be more interviews with specialists, therapy to process their ordeal, and a long legal process ahead. But none of that mattered in this moment. What mattered was that Casey and Chloe were safe, against all odds, against the dwindling hope of law enforcement and the passage of time that typically dimmed the chances of finding missing children alive. They had beaten the statistics. They were going home. I love you both so much, Alexandra told them, her voice thick with emotion. And I promise we're going to be okay. As Casey and Chloe nestled against her, their small bodies warm and alive and miraculous, Alexandra reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had taken unwavering determination, the kindness of strangers, and perhaps a touch of fate.
A pilot flying low over an Island at just the right moment.
A fisherman with a sharp memory and a powerful telescope. A police officer willing to follow his gut rather than protocol. Sometimes, she realized, Love was enough to overcome even the most impossible odds. Sometimes refusing to give up was the only thing that made the difference between loss and reunion. And sometimes, even in the darkest moments, hope was justified.